Welcome to Trail Manners, the podcast so dedicated to mountain trails and running that they broadcast out of a 78 Volkswagen bus in the mountains. Who does that? Eric and Joel are your hosts and will bring you the trail life as you may have not heard it before. You hear about everything from gear reviews, nutrition to keep you upright and moving forward, and they'll even bring guests into the bus for conversations that you won't hear anywhere else. It's time for some running adventures on a higher elevation. The old 78 Volkswagen bus is fired up and headed to the mountains. Here are your hosts for Trail Manners, proudly representing the 801 with their passion and love for the trails, Eric Manning and Joel Hatch.
Hello and welcome to the Trail Manners Podcast, episode number 87. Today, Joel hooked up with Draney over the phone, where they discuss the transition from road running to trail running. So if this is your first time listening, then thanks for coming. The Trail Manners Podcast is produced every week for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at trailmanners.com. Come back often, and please feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Trail Manners. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get after it.
All right, welcome to episode 87 of the Trail Manners Podcast. I'm your host, Joel Hatch. With us today, we have Draney from Afton, Wyoming. Episode 87 will cover the successful transition from road marathon to trail ultra. Now, this topic came to us from one of our loyal listeners, Natalie, Sheffield. She sent us a question saying, "Hey guys, I really want to run the 50K, and I have a background in road running and in triathlon, and I thought it would be an easy transition." But she fell prey to the fear of missing out. She saw what everybody was doing on social media and thought, dang, if they can do it, I can do it. But she got burnt out. So she asked us, can you guys cover this topic? Because it would be good for those newbies that are making that transition. So I thought, hey, what better way to address this topic than to have, our good friend Draney get on the show. And Ty's joining us. He just got done with the track workout, so he's a little bit smelly, so thank goodness he's just doing this over the phone. But Ty, thank you again, and how you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. So for those of you that don't know Ty and his background, he is a Patagonia-sponsored runner. Also, his other sponsors are PC Run Co., that's Park City Run Co. for those people not in the know, Ultra Aspire, 307 Beards, because they really care about that glorious beard that he has, Black Diamond, and First Endurance. Ty's been coaching for over 17 years. He's coached over 60 all-state athletes. He has 11 state championships under his belt, and he's been named Coach of the Year over 19 times. So he has a pretty solid resume. Ty's also coached to the Ultra Running Stars, and you can find more information at tydraneyendurance.com. So Ty, I think this is a good time to maybe touch on this topic because we have some really good trail marathons coming up at the end of the summer for maybe some of these people that are making that transition. And I wanted to kind of just talk about why people might make that transition from road marathon to the ultra scene.
Well, the whys, I guess, could be a whole bunch of reasons why they might want to do that. Probably mostly because, like you say, that's what all the cool kids are doing, right? I mean, getting out on the trails, doing those sort of things. I think we're always looking to transition to something, if running your 15th Ogden Marathon or whatever that is, everybody's looking for a new wrinkle or a new twist to kind of spice up the routine and add to that level of curiosity, to kind of spark and inspire to keep.
All right, so we just had a little bit of technical difficulty with the call getting dropped. Sorry about that. So we were talking about some of the reasons why somebody might want to make that jump from road marathon to the ultra distance. And Ty, you were saying that It could be multiple reasons. The one that you were trying to elaborate on was possibly just looking for that new challenge, that next challenge. I think that's kind of an innate thing for most runners, right? Where they start off at that 5K level, and then once they kind of get comfortable with that, the next thing is the 10K, half marathon, marathon. And then once you've done a couple of marathons, you're comfortable with that. Maybe you have a friend that does these crazy ultra marathons. You're like, huh, I wonder what that's all about.
Yeah, I think by nature, runners are people that like to be challenged. I always find it pretty fascinating. We like to be challenged and we like new things, but not too new of things because we like our routine, right? I
Right.
mean, we're that's kind of human nature, and so I think moving to the trails is a great way to find that balance to spice up what you're already doing and still find ways and excuses to maintain that routine that we've developed all these years of getting out and getting on our morning run or whatever that is. And so and trying something new makes it exciting, makes can make things fresh again.
Exactly. I think when you have that routine, you crave it. It's something that becomes part of your daily life. And after a while of doing the same thing over and over again, it can lead to a little bit of a burnout. And this is kind of that way to maintain that routine, but then keep things fresh
Yep, exactly.
for sure. So, if you've made that decision that you're going to step it up, you're going to go to that next level, which is traditionally the 50K. That's considered the entry level point for ultra marathon. What can somebody expect when they make that transition or they make that leap to that ultra running world?
uh Well, I think the risks are, like you say, that could maybe to bite off too much too soon. Though, we all have that friend who, ran a 5K and then ran their first 100 or whatever, there's always those outliers.
Yeah, I
But
don't have those type of
I,
friends.
yeah, well, I guess I run with the wrong crowd then, but pun intended there. But yeah, I think there are some adjustments, that all of it is just running, but there are a few things I think. Yeah, it's really easy, like you say, with the social media and stuff and if you get caught up too much in the normal social part of it, there's a group run here, there's a Wednesday night run here.
Oh yeah.
You got to find that balance to see how you can improve, how you can participate, but without overdoing it. I think the nice thing about the trails is the with the ups and downs and the different terrain that actually injuries, your typical running injuries, are less likely
Right.
because
They're
because
not on that curb the whole time running.
yep, you're not on that flat surface, you're not running, with the curve of the road
Right.
and some of those things. But yeah, that you just kind of got to listen to your body, proceed with caution, and not let your heart get ahead of your brain too far.
Right. So when somebody does make that transition, obviously they got to dial it back just a little bit because maybe they haven't been that experienced trail runner in the past. Um, I think what a lot of people struggle with when they do make that leap is that they kind of expect that their times are going to be similar. So what I mean by that is if they go out and they do say they do a 10-mile training run on a trail, well, that's not going to be the same as a 10-mile training run on the road, right?
Yep, exactly. And that's kind of the first point. I just jotted down a few things this morning when I was thinking about, about what we talk about. And yeah, that concept of that you're going to slow down, I think is probably the very hardest thing that you're going to realize. And yeah, because like you say, you're going up, you're going down, you're going over roots, you're jumping over logs, you're doing these things that make trail running unique and different from road running.
Right.
But sometimes, yeah, I think that maybe to help with that transition, a good idea is to maybe start training by time instead of worrying, say you used to go out and you'd run your 10-mile runs at 8-minute pace. So you go that I try to encourage my runners, if that's where you're at and you're transitioning, well, go out for an 80-minute run on the terrain where you'd be. Yeah, the Strava guys and all that stuff, you odds are you're not going to run your 10 miles, but
In that
the
80
effort
minutes.
in that 80 minutes, and so as you build towards that, you get more confident and get stronger, and then start adding in mileage other places. But I think the terrain, and then you forget even the altitude you're running at.
Right.
You end up at the top of Snowbird, or you end up on Logan Peak, or wherever you are running. It's just going to be slower. You have less oxygen, and so you take it and enjoy it for what it is, and enjoy the scenery, and put in your time, and your body will adjust. And if you, as long as you can keep your brain, from freaking out about that you're not running, your 8-minute mile pace all the time.
Right. I think a lot of road runners have that trouble transitioning, where they keep expecting to maintain that pace they did on the road, but they don't take into account the variables. And you really did nail it on the head with, it's about the variation of terrain. That could be roots, that could be rocks, that could be going up, that could be going down. And how should somebody best deal with that, or become more comfortable running on the trail? Because we're going to assume that some of these people are kind of new to the trail running scene, and they might not know, how to negotiate the trail in an efficient manner.
Well, it takes practice, right? It's a specificity thing. Like you want to get better at swimming, riding a bike's not going to help you with that so much. And so just spending some time on the trails, and getting used to that. Another great idea is, there's plenty of people around. We're on information overload again, going back to the internet and those kinds of things. So I mean, but the easiest and most fun way is just find a mentor. Find somebody that you enjoy spending time with, and if you can go out and chat, and you can be in some cool scenery and do those kind of things, you're not going to be so worried about checking your segments and some of that other stuff. You're going to see kind of how it's done. That in this really steep section through this rocky section of trail, it's okay to walk, or you can pick up on some of those little nuances of trail running that might seem kind of weird if you're just out there banging it out, trying to figure it out on your own.
So that brings up a really good point when you said it's okay to walk. So in a normal, let's say normal kind of mountainous 50K, how often are you expecting to walk for an average runner?
For an average runner, boy, I don't. It depends on the course. There comes a point for everybody, and that point varies a little bit, when it becomes more efficient and faster to walk than it is to run.
Right, and we're talking about going uphill.
Even in a 50K, yeah,
Right.
going uphill, you're gonna because unless you're doing something like a vertical K or something where you're really cranking it out in a short amount of minutes, anybody in an ultra is going to be out there for multiple hours.
Right.
Even if you're a screaming fast person, where you're talking about running around something like Way Too Cool, or some of these faster courses where guys are running 3 hours and 15 minutes, that's still multiple hours.
Right.
And so there comes a tipping point in there to where you're just, you might feel stronger, you're just spinning in, but running a steep section may just be inefficient. And again, it takes a little time to kind of figure out where that is for you. As the distance increases, then the opportunities to walk also increase. I encourage, had a friend running 100K the first time in Pocatello this last weekend. I was like, any doubt whatsoever on it, if it's uphill, walk.
Right.
If you have any doubt if whether you should run or walk, because there'll be plenty of time to run later, when you're going to be out there 12, 14, 16 hours. You've got to conserve some energy some point of the race.
Now, I think that's a good point to kind of just drive home is that it's okay to walk because you're conserving energy overall. You're not getting to that point where you're redlining it, which is harder to recover from. But still, so many people from that road background really struggle with the concept of walking, and it's okay to walk. And if you take that time and you look around at other, so this is during a race scenario. If you take that time and you look around, you're going to see other people walking as well. And I think that's a good cue to be like, oh, I need to chill. It's okay to walk. It's not, doesn't mean that I'm a less of a runner. It means I'm being smart in the environment that I'm, or the terrain that I'm at this point in time.
Exactly.
What about, so you've said a couple times now that it's going to be longer. It's going to be multiple hours. How should somebody then deal with fueling? So nutrition and hydration, because most road marathons will have aid stations almost every mile or every 2 miles, but they definitely don't go more than 3. In the trail running world, you might have an aid station every 3 miles. You might have an aid station every, normally it's every 5 to 6. Some races, it might not even be for 10 miles. And I think that's another big hurdle for those people getting into it. They really struggle with that. How do I properly keep myself, 1, hydrated, and 2, fueled?
Yeah, this is the fun part, right? I mean, we don't buy too much stuff. It's not like the fisherman who needs a boat and lures, and you got to get and try on some packs, try some bottles. There's a couple advantages and disadvantages to each of those. If you can carry your bottle or if you prefer using a bladder in a pack, that's the most efficient way. They've done studies to showing, energy used and that sort of thing. You can carry that on your back instead of out in your hand.
Right.
There's what I really like, if they're close enough together and the temperature isn't too hot, is I like carrying just a hand bottle because I can either just stuff that in my shorts when it's empty enough or whatever, just carry that. Having that right there in my hand reminds me to drink.
Yeah.
Sometimes if it's just stuck there back behind you, you get chatting, you get competitive, you put your head down, you're running. Suddenly, you get to the next aid station and you think, man, I drank all this water, and they go to fill it up for you, and they're like, you haven't drank anything in
I
the
know.
last leg, and so that's a good reminder there. Nutrition, I don't know, probably the only thing trickier for nutrition as far as being a personalized thing would be footwear. Everybody is so unique in that area, so you got to try some stuff. I mean, I think most gels, most energy companies you want to try to get in a couple 100 calories per hour. And
Right.
the more liquid it is and the colder you can keep it, the quicker your body is going to be able to access those calories. Some of the guys, the Carl Meltzers and the Jeff Brownings, and some of those guys that can do like 6 gels an hour, it's no wonder they can run so far so fast. But I know for me, then I just end up off the side puking because I have
Right.
way too much in my stomach, and so that's something you need to practice. I know, it's been a kick. A lot of people are big on like their fat metabolism runs, and I'm not going to take in any calories and those I suppose have their place, but you got to get dialed in what it is you want and what you're able to eat.
Right.
And those of if you got kind of an iron gut, what a better place. I mean, when you can roll in an aid station and you've got, candy, cookies,
Right.
fruit, all those, and just a big smorgasbord, and you load up and you keep on trucking.
Yeah, I think that might be a surprise for those first time ultra runners is the aid station. You come up to it and you're just like, what is this? There's,
Delicious.
exactly.
Delicious is the correct answer to that.
For sure. I think that when I roll into an aid station, usually it's whatever appeals to me. And generally that's been potato chips, and if they have it, watermelon. Those are the two things I'll usually, eat a little bit of. If it's a longer race, peanut butter and jelly squares are pretty good for me, like one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll have some gels in between the aid stations as well. And I usually vary the gels. So that way I'm not hitting the same flavor or the same
Yeah.
consistency because, a Power Bar gel is really kind of watery compared to a goo gel, which is very viscous, right? It's very thick and
Correct.
goopy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'll go ahead and mix those up. But it took a while to kind of figure that out, right? And as you touched on earlier, it's about doing this during your training runs to kind of find out what works best for you. And the aid stations are kind of there at first it's an experiment. You're like, well, I'm going to roll in here. This looks pretty good. But how's it going to feel in, 30 minutes down the trail after I've eaten, 5 or 6 of these pierogies?
Yeah, you're gonna know. Body's pretty highly tuned instrument, despite our best efforts sometimes, and yeah, it'll talk to you, and and you'll know if you should go, like next time I'm pacing a Wasatch, I'll pass on the squid jerky, stuff like that, just
Squid jerky.
sounded like a good idea at the time,
That
you
never
know.
sounds good.
No, oh, it was delicious and salty, and 20 miles later, I was hoping a cougar would eat me while I was laying beside the trail. So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, yeah, and that does. It takes a little experimentation and see where you're at.
I think that one other thing that we just haven't really touched on fully yet, and it's kind of a big deal, is hydration. Like you said earlier, you talked about actually carrying the water because in marathons you're probably not going to carry water because the aid stations are close enough. You're going to drink some water when you get there, but in the trail running world, our aid stations are spaced out far enough that you need to carry something, whether that's a handheld in your hand or, like you said, in a bladder. You'll figure out what works best for you depending on the actual distance in the train. But one thing that we need to kind of address is how much do you actually drink?
Well, you can have such crazy varying temperatures. We were at the Scout Mountain ultra runs, and I ran the 35K with my son, and you're up on Scout Mountain, it was 60 degrees and your butt sliding snowfields,
Right.
and you get down to the Nordic Center, there were rumors of it
Oh,
being 96 degrees
that
in there,
place is awful.
and it just cook your brains out, and
Right.
so yeah, you want to again see what the recommendations are. I usually try to mix in, sports drink and water,
Yeah.
um, kind of mix through those. But I know in those sort of temperatures, we were blasting. We did not, we're not carrying enough bottles,
No.
between the two of us and I don't know that you can, but you tank up, you be able to carry 40 to 60 ounces, and in those kind of temperatures you're trying to get through 20 to 40 ounces of liquids an hour,
Right.
and so
I think
yeah,
that's the
that
general recommendation is that
yeah,
somewhere around that 20 ounces an hour or so. But like you said, if it's hot, you could easily go through 40, maybe even
yeah,
more.
we did. I know we were filling up because we had, between the two of us, we had about 60 ounces from the big fur aid station, and we ran them all dry by the time we got about 2 miles left, and we watered and tanked and dunked there at the stock tank, because yeah, we were out, and we knew we had 20 to 40 minutes of running left, and yeah, so that all those things have to be taken into consideration for sure.
Right. And I think that just comes down to just testing it, experience. Just that's what your training runs are for, is to kind of fine tune how you respond to different terrain and different temperatures. And
It does, and
then,
it goes to that specificity, and that can be a
right.
challenge. I know I had a conversation with more than one runner that said, well, the only time I have to run is from 5 to 6:30 every morning.
True.
I was not ready to be running. The 35K started at 11,
Right.
and we were, we finished in around 5 hours or something. And I mean, so it's, we ran right through the heat of the day,
Right.
and especially if it's a target race or something, you're really a venue you're really looking to do well at. Yeah, that's another thing that needs to be taken into consideration is time of day, and
That's a good point.
how you're feeling, and working some runs in. One of my athletes, well, Mark Robbins, is trying to get ready for Western States, and sent me a picture of him running, in the middle of the day on Saturday with I think he was pacing a brother at Squaw Peak or something, with 4 layers of clothes on. And yeah, those are all factors you have to figure out.
That I think that's such a good point because we are creatures of habit. So we'll run at like 5 in the morning for 2 hours, and then on the weekends, since you're used to running early in the morning, you're probably going to go out and run early again. You're not going to be out during that heat of the day. So how does somebody prepare for that heat? Because where we are, out here in the West, you're always going to run into a really hot race day. It's very rare that you're going to have one that's on the cooler side. So if you're always running in the morning, what's the best way to either prepare for that or to mitigate the effects of race day once you're actually there?
Uh, Boy, there's a whole thing. Trail Runner just really had a really good article, the talking about the different things that you can do to get ready. As it becomes Western States time, and athletes spend time in saunas, running with extra clothes, running in the heat of the day, just driving around doing their errands without having the air conditioning on.
Right.
Um, the whole process of getting better at running, and especially, I think, ultra running is the idea of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
That's true.
Like you say, we're creatures of habit, and we like to, as I, we flip on the air conditioning, we use the remote, all those things. We have everything instantly at our fingers. It's going through some of those processes and getting used to it. I've heard of guys, getting ready for Western, and they don't turn on their air conditioning or roll down their windows, and with their commute back and forth from work, and every little thing that they can do to get used to, functioning when the temperature is higher, and yeah, and then on race day, if it's still that hot, again, you got to make sure you have ice in your bottles, and
Right.
and you got to you got to slow down.
Yeah, I think
I
that's
mean,
important. Is that you have to really because it can become something that is borderline emergency if you're out there for a long time and you're just exposed to that heat, and you're not hydrating as much as you can because maybe the distance between the aid stations is longer than you expect, you can get in trouble pretty quick out there.
yeah,
And you
no
got to
doubt.
take your time. When it's hot like that, you want to take your time in your aid stations and hope that they've got some ice on hand. And sometimes they can't because those aid stations are pretty darn remote.
Yeah, no doubt.
So that maybe brings up a good point. How do you deal with an aid station?
Uh, um, yeah, you need to take the time that you need, and I think it depends on the time of the race.
Right?
I think that if you're really racing, you need to be very efficient. They can be a black hole, as you always hear the old adage, beware the chair, and some of that stuff. There can be minutes and hours lost in aid stations, if you don't have a clear plan
Right.
of what you need, and you need to get in and out of there. But when you feel yourself teetering, sometimes you need to take the time. You need to sit in the chair. You need to get in the shade. You got to
Right.
get in the creek and get your body temperature down. Um, and again, as it sounds like a stuck record here, is that's going to take some experience, and that's when it's nice to have a mentor, to have somebody who's been there and done that, to be like, what should I do in that situation? It's where I know lots of people argue about self-sufficiency, and should there be pacers in hundreds or not being pacers in hundreds? And uh, I see both sides to both arguments, but some of those things can be critical.
Right.
To have someone that there's pressure to help you make some of those decisions besides just charging down the trail.
Yeah, but
And
we're
so,
addressing that newbie, that runner that
hmm
maybe has never done that before, right? So
yeah.
let's say that it's relatively early in the race, it's warm, um, they're just about to come into an aid station. What should they be doing? Mental checklist should they be going through?
I think they need to make sure, assess their fluids,
Okay,
uh, coming in so they can decide how much they've drank, uh, so they know, you need to top them off no matter where they're at. And when you do that inventory, you're going to need to know if you need to drink more in
right,
the next leg. So, uh, so I would get see if anything sounds good. Sometimes a little salty food sounds good. Just look over what they have. Top off your water if they've got ice. Get as much ice in you as you can, even in your hat and your shirt, whatever needs to keep your body temperature down. And if you're not familiar with the trail, maybe ask somebody how far to the next aid station.
right.
Sometimes they'll post it there, and that will help you assess how much you may or may not need to carry. Um, and then you move on through there, because it takes a lot of speed. You spend 15 minutes at an aid station. um, you've got to run a minute or two faster per mile to make up that time.
Right.
And if that's something you're concerned about, I don't know that you need to hurry, but you need to be efficient as you move through those,
Right. And
and
like
then
you
make
said,
sure
so
you.
if you're making
Mhm.
that inventory, that checklist coming into the aid station, that allows you to be, efficient as you move through. And especially if you have a drop bag.
Yep.
Because that can take time to get it. If you're lucky and there's enough volunteers, they can go get that drop bag for you while you're refilling your water bottle and maybe eating something real quick, and then you can get whatever you need out your drop bag.
Yep.
I think that when those races out there that where you do have that luxury of having a drop bag, I think organizing your drop bag is pretty important too. So that way you're not like fumbling around trying to find stuff. For me, I will put things in baggies, in Ziploc bags. So I'll have a Ziploc bag for my gels. I'll have a Ziploc bag for if I'm going to change my socks for my socks, stuff like that. So it's all really compartmentalized. It's labeled. I know exactly what is going to be in there. So that way there's no second guessing and I'm not like fumbling around for it. So that way I can be really efficient.
Yep. That's a good idea. The nice thing about drop bags too is that you can truly, customize whatever it is you like to eat or drink, or, if you have some of those special things that you might need. Another thing you might think about, getting doused with water when you go through. If sometimes they'll have sprayers spraying water, sunscreen,
Yeah.
you know, getting some sunscreen on. I know that uh, when it's really hot, I like to some have like those special ice things that they'll wear, cooling bandanas, just an old-fashioned bandana to get where you can dip it, get that wet on your neck. It can help keep you cool down too.
Yeah, I think that that's something that I really haven't fully embraced that yet, and I want to. Um, I think it's just out of sheer stubbornness, but I know it's going to help. Um,
Yeah.
I
It's
think
easier
those,
for us Wyoming guys, like,
yeah.
where you get to wear the cowboy bandana, and so yeah,
Well,
it's less of a fashion faux pas.
it's just not as hot up there as it is down here in Utah. So you guys don't get as
Yeah,
many opportunities to practice that. I
yeah.
think those buffs might be. Have you ever tried it with a buff before? I wonder if those would work.
I know they have them. I know they have small ones that are partially sewn that you can just stuff ice in them.
Hmm.
Yeah, or you could just make your own, right?
Yeah.
Because they're so long, you just cut them in half and then fold them in half and sew them again. Sometimes I know you can, when you get lots and lots of water, sometimes chafing can become an issue.
It's
Um,
always an issue when you get really wet like that.
Yep. And so, yeah, there's also some variables there that you might want to the chafing I guess should always be on the checklist. Feet,
Okay.
make sure you got any hot spots, because taking a few seconds or a few minutes to put out some of those fires early, can save you a lot of pain and misery
Oh
and
yeah.
slowness later in the race.
And especially that post race shower, that could be the most painful thing if you've got really bad chafing.
Yeah,
You
no
know,
doubt.
I for me, I'll go ahead and use. Currently, I'm using squirrel's nut butter, and so I'll lube everything up with that. And then I also have a little bit of the powdered squeaky cheeks. I'll dump in the shorts too. That's kind of like my concoction of chafe proof that's been working lately. But then I also carry with me, if it's a really long race, I'll carry with me that micro tube of squirrel's nut butter, and I can
Hmm.
hit all those hot spots real quick if I need to.
Yeah, yeah, because you can vary. I know we used half a tube of it on Saturday just because it's go everything. It's 75 at the start, and then you're sliding through snow, and then it's 90, and then it's 96, and then it's and yeah, so it's nice to have a few of those little knickknacks on hand to put out the fire if you need that in between aid stations. But if you don't, or you got a pocket or two in your shorts or whatever to
Oh yeah.
carry some of those things. And but yeah, pretty good thing to add to your inventory list as you're going in to make sure you take care of those things before you move on and charge down the trail.
Right. Some of the aid stations will have Vaseline. Not all, but I've seen some. And I think it depends on how desperate you are to use that because you know somebody else that's had some bad chafing has used that. And hopefully they've had the popsicle stick to, apply it to each individual and they
Hmm.
throw the popsicle stick away. But just on the chance that they don't, oh man, you got to be desperate to go there for sure.
Yeah, you're racing. When I'm racing hard, I don't worry about that so much. But yeah,
Well, no, I mean, you're a
you gotta
fast
do what
guy.
you
I'm
gotta
talking about like us normal
do. Yeah,
runners, right?
yeah, yeah.
We got time to worry about stuff like that. All right. So I think we've touched on a lot of good topics so far as what to expect, how to make it easier to transition. We've talked about slowing down, it's okay to walk. Really, it is. Practice on varied terrain. If you've got a key race, you want to try to mimic that race in your training as far as terrain goes. Um, the time of day that you're going to run, if you can make it happen, your race is going to be hot, run during that time of day if you can. If not, then it's kind of a mental thing that you're going to have to adjust to. I know it's going to be hot, then I have to prepare with drinking more liquids. Maybe my nutrition strategy is going to be more liquid based, whether that comes from uh, say your drink mix or through gels. Then we also touched on how to move through the aid station quickly, taking care of the little things before they get big, whether that is going to be with chafing. That rock that you think is in your shoe might not be a rock in your shoe. It's probably going to be a blister. Take care of those little things before they become big things, for sure. What else do you think is important for the road marathoner that's transitioning to ultra?
I think back on the training part is I think it's important. You're going to be out there a long time. You need to run long. That needs to become one of your focus workouts. But I don't know that depending on how much mileage you're doing, but if you're running 50, 60 miles a week or whatever to get ready for your road marathon, you don't, most of us don't have time to, like some of these elites, to run 120, 150, 180 miles a week.
Nor do they have the
But
body type that can sustain that.
for sure, for sure. But I think it's important that you shift that mileage. and what your focus work is, and so that maybe you do a couple back-to-back long runs on the weekend, and that's kind of your focus workout, and the other times you're doing some other things, or and so the focus and the intensity is going to shift more than you may need to increase mileage, but what I've noticed for myself personally, and what for many people is, I don't know how much mileage has to do with as much with how well you perform, but it has a huge amount to do with how quickly you can recover from a long effort.
Okay.
And so I think that's one of the things. You can go out and run a 50K and maybe run 30, 40 miles a week, if you're pretty strategic with your workouts. But knowing that when you go out there and hammer 31 miles, you're probably going to be pretty beat up.
Right.
Whereas if you can increase your mileage, again, to something that's still manageable, but maybe run 50 or 60, I think you'll notice that the body, you'll recover way faster after your refocus race. But so a shift into doing some of those longer miles again on that terrain that you expect to be racing on.
So you said that one of the important things is to do back-to-back long runs. Is that something that you're going to have one of your clients do every week, or are you going to do it every other week, every third week? How often do you throw that into the training plan?
Oh, it depends, and I find I go more to that for longer ultras than I do, say, for a 50K.
Okay.
I mean, because it is, you can get away with a 50K with marathon training.
Right.
And then once you go to 50 miles, I think it takes a little more adjusting. And then once you go to 100 miles, it's way more, I don't know, harder is the right word, but way harder than, it's exponentially more difficult
Right.
than moving from 50K to 50 miles.
Right. Because
And
that's kind
so,
of like a linear progression at that point where you can start,
yep,
you know, making these assumptions like, okay, I handled that 50K pretty good. If I bump my training up just a little bit more, then I can see doing the 50 miler. Whereas when you go from 50 miles to 100 miles, man, you're throwing in a whole bunch of other variables at that point, and that might be a discussion for another show because
oh, for
there
sure.
are so many different variables. You've got eating actually whole food at that point. Well, for most of us, we're going to eat whole food. Running at night and how to deal with that, and how to just will yourself to keep going forward when you're just dead dog tired.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. So, but like I say, so I think just a shift in mileage a little bit to focusing, uh, using that long run. Oftentimes with shorter races, that it's hard workout, easy day, hard workout, easy day, long run, and it's a key component, but not really a focus. I think it needs to become a focus, whatever that is. Whether you want to work up to where you can do a 25-mile long run, let's say, and be comfortable with your gear and where you're at, and then the rest will take care of itself. I don't think very often that we need to you need to go out and do 31-mile long run to get ready for 50K.
I think that'd be
Uh,
really tough.
yep,
Your recovery is going to be definitely slower at that point. Whereas if you do that 22 to 25-mile long run with the solid base, and like you were saying, your recovery is better, which then leads to having better workouts.
it does. So when you have some of those other times, which kind of leads to the only other point I could really think of is, it sounds a little kind of contradicts what we talked about at the first as far as slowing down, but still, especially for 50K, still need to find some time to run fast.
Oh, for
It
sure.
may not be quite the focus, but through strides, tempo runs, if you like getting on the track and doing some stuff, find some time. I know from the outside looking in, ultra runners kind of have a reputation of being plotters, but yeah, those if you're cranking out a fast 50K, or even if you're a Walmsley or any of those guys, they're definitely not plotters.
No, they're
They're getting
changing it.
after it.
Yeah, they're getting after it big time for
Yep.
sure. So let's talk about strides a little bit. I know that when I was being coached by you, you certainly had us doing strides quite a bit at the end of a run. And at first, I was a little bit confused about the notion of doing strides because I did not have that track background, and I found myself running them too fast. How would you best describe doing strides at the end of a run?
Yeah, we usually prescribe that a lot to people, especially after easy recovery days. Kind of get some blood flow in there, and just to engage those, some of those fast muscles, your hamstrings, parts of your glutes that make you run fast. And I don't know, they have a million different names. Sometimes the terminology is confusing. Striders or rollovers or just 50 to 100 meters where you build up to about 80 to 85% of max speed
Right,
and focus on being relaxed, good form, and then you just shut it down. But it's one of those things that engages those muscles so you don't forget about them.
right.
And because you get tired at the end of a hilly ultra, I'm a big believer you're going to recruit every muscle that you can find,
Oh, absolutely.
and and uh, and you're gonna feel stronger. And the idea with doing 5 to 10 of those after one of those runs is to get those fired up, and you should feel fresher after. It kind of engages some of those other muscles that we might not use as much in long racing, and get you prepped up for for tempo runs or some of those quality workouts that might be on your schedule.
Right. So a stride is essentially you go somewhere up to 100 meters, run about 80% of your max speed. But then what do you do in between each one of those intervals? Do you want people jogging back? Do you want them walking back to the start?
Oh, either one. Some people like to walk back. I like it just doing them full rest. I mean, it's not for the aerobic work. We're
Right.
not banging these out to increase the cardiovascular fitness. But yeah, so you can. I just do them back and forth actually in my neighbor's driveway because their driveway's a little bit longer than mine.
That's a really
But
long
and
driveway.
I just uh, stand and rest, and then once my heart rate drops back down, then we'll fire them up and go back the other direction. And yeah, it's a good way to uh, insert some speed and a little bit of quality work without taking anything from the bank.
I think that one of the things that I saw by the end of the like doing say 3 months of strides is that my mechanics became more efficient because I had failed to put that in my training throughout the last like 10 years, right? So my stride became more efficient, meaning that it wasn't laborious, it wasn't plodding. I was being more efficient with my footfall. Um, you become more agile and nimble through, the terrain. I think that was one of the really big beneficial things I saw from doing them.
Yeah, awesome. Those are all the good things, and it becomes when you run faster as part of your ultra training too, and it becomes a part of that is your perceived effort. If you can, get on, let's say, you go out and do a tempo run at whatever 6 minute pace, let's say, or 6:30 pace, um, and you can get to where you're comfortable as you can be. That sounds a little bit weird when you're doing a tempo run, but you can become, I don't know, comfortable, efficient at doing that.
Right.
When you hit the flats, during your 50K, you're going to be much more efficient, and running 7:30 it's not hard anymore.
Right.
All right. Yeah, and you're gonna feel fast and feel confident, and be able to be super efficient through those flat parts of your ultra.
So what we have so far is back-to-back long runs as key to being successful in that transition to the ultra world. Also, you talked about doing strides. I know you like tempo runs, but you've also had your clients do repeats, and it could be anywhere between 1 minute and 3 minute hilly runs. How important do you think that is?
Again, depends on the phase of your training you're doing, and it becomes it's a good way to include that hard effort, but specific to what terrain you're on. Doing the hills. I don't think it was Frank Shorter said that they're speed work in disguise. That you're not able to run fast, but it forces you to use those same muscle groups and give you that resistance. Engage your hip flexors. A few things. Sometimes we don't lift our knees very much as ultra runners, and get engage those hip flexors, your glutes, and it gives you make you efficient on running on the train you'll be racing in.
That's great. Well, I think that I hope that we've done a really good job of covering the topic of transitioning successfully from road marathon into the ultra world. So before we sign off, Ty, is there any last tidbit of advice or anything that you want to cover?
I don't know. I think that none of us are getting rich at this. So you want to find that happy medium between getting what you want out of it and enjoying yourself, and those get kind of intermingled together. But there's plenty of information out there, plenty of people. Drop an email to ask someone at your local running shop. There's lots of stuff out there, and you can cobble together what it is you want and need, and that's, I've always maintained, that's my favorite thing about the sport is you can get anything we want out of it. It's whatever we want to get out of it. You put in the time, and that's the magic of being involved with these kind of things.
That's so true. Well, Ty, thank you again for coming on the show and giving away all this really great knowledge. If you have more information for Ty, you can contact him through his website. That would be TyDraneyEndurance.com. Of course, we'll have all that information in the show notes. Again, thank you, Ty. We really appreciate it. And like you said, it's okay to walk. I'm Joel Hatch for the Trail Manners Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Trail Manners Podcast. We'd like to thank Ty Draney for taking the time to join us. Sorry about those technical difficulties there. And we also want to encourage everybody to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Trail Manners, or swing by the website at trailmanners.com. There on the store page, you can check out some cool gear, get some swagging rights, and don't forget, our hoodie pre-sale goes until June 16th, 2017, so a couple more days. Get a Now Go Get It hoodie. Until next time, this is Eric Manning with Joel Hatch reminding you, you don't get what you wish for, you get what you work for. Now go get it.